Colorado's most controversial bills, a so-called assault weapons ban, might not be an assault weapons ban for much longer. That didn't stop hundreds of people from heading to the Capitol to speak their mind. The people who make the laws must watch this show. There's a new push to hold utility companies accountable, but you'll have to wait to see the results on your Excel bill.
And the purpose of that is to align incentives. It's not to save you the 2 pennies.
As Denver prepares to roll one up, the city's also rolling out some new rules on 420. And this week, we can help foster kids access activities like summer camps, sports, and, kid stuff. That's tonight on Next. If a bill to ban so-called assault weapons doesn't actually ban all assault weapons, what does it do? One of the sponsors of the controversial bill acknowledged today it likely doesn't have the votes to pass. She offered an amendment to water it down, banning bump stocks, but not all of those so-called assault weapons. It comes on a day when hundreds of people filed into the Capitol to testify about it. As written right now, the bill would ban the manufacture and sale of assault weapons, defined in the bill as any firearms that can fire a high volume of ammunition accurately or be modified to do so. It was introduced in early March, separate from a suite of gun bills with widespread Democratic support. Since the bill's introduction, Democratic leadership and Governor Polis have expressed hesitation about the banning of assault weapons on the state level. This morning, more than 400 people signed up to testify at the bill's first committee hearing. The vast majority of those people are critics of the bill. But before testimony even began, the bill's House sponsor, Representative Elizabeth Epps, suggested she may gut her own bill by amending it to only ban bump stocks. Those are attachments that allow semi-automatic weapons to fire like machine guns. Testimony continued anyway and is expected to last through at least 11 o'clock tonight.
I have a half dozen friends affected directly by an assault weapon.
You are now aiming to deprive us of the right to defend ourselves.
Representative Epps has not yet filed an amendment, but even if the bill is watered down to become a bump stock ban, it's not exactly smooth sailing either. An existing federal rule against bump stocks is currently under a court challenge. What started out as a story decoding your Excel bills has now led to potential legislation to lower that bill. Our Marshall Zellender has educated all of us, explaining what you're charged for and why. He's revealed some costs that the state legislature is now trying to prevent from being passed on to you. But the changes being considered may not bring immediate relief.
We had reduced our consumption by 30%, and my rate went up 70%.
There is nothing coming out of their pocket.
We need some help here, guys.
Customers of Xcel Energy, you've been heard. Lawmakers who created a special committee to look at reducing utility rates have introduced legislation that attempts to do just that. The bill would make several policy changes, starting with how much high gas costs can be passed on to customers.
Your largest charge is your ECA, which is the actual fuel.
When we did our first story on Xcel bills in January, it was to explain what you're charged for and why. The reason our bills were so high this past winter was colder temperatures and the cost of fuel, which was much higher than the year before. And the cost Xcel pays for fuel is passed on to customers dollar for dollar.
We earn zero profit. We make zero margin on those. We don't make money on those, so we pass those through to customers.
This past winter, when fuel costs skyrocketed, this bill would have said that you actually can't charge customers for more than X amount of dollars of fuel costs.
This bill would do a few things regarding gas costs. One, if they're high, customers would still pay the cost, just spread out over time, not immediately on our next bill. It would also create risk for Xcel and other utility companies to share in the cost if the companies buy gas when it's priced too high.
The board and the shareholders now are going to say, hey, company, you're on the hook for fuel, some of the fuel costs. So what are you doing to keep those costs low? Right now, there's nobody asking that question because it doesn't really matter. This provides some risk exposure so that they actually will care about those costs.
The bill also limits expenses on many areas we exposed, like the lawyers we end up paying for that Xcel hires to argue for higher rates, and advertising we pay for, even though Xcel does not have competition.
They can't do any goodwill advertising. They can't do any branding advertising. but they can talk about renewable energy. They can talk about energy efficiency.
CU advertising professor Morgan Young looked at the advertising section of the legislation. He sees simple ways for the company to still advertise on topics the legislation tries to restrict and still pass along the cost to customers. A cost that Xcel estimated to be an average of $3.02 a year on a customer's bill.
The $3.02 will probably remain. It would just be a slight tweak to the content of the advertising.
The bill to overtime lower our bills has its first hearing tomorrow. I want to expand a bit on the lawyer fees. We paid $2 million on lawyer fees when the company argued for a higher gas rate last year. This bill would not erase that $2 million, but it would allow the Public Utility Commission to limit the number of experts Xcel could hire and bring in, or perhaps limit the maximum dollar amount to allow that they would allow to be passed along to customers. But again, when you look at $2 million over 1.5 million customers, it's just a fraction of what we pay. I mean, that's change. The big driver in the cost, again, is natural gas. And this would try to change how Xcel and the other utility companies purchase natural gas by making them financially responsible if they choose to buy gas when it is priced very high.
So you and I have both seen it. So has most people in Colorado, bills that have gone up hundreds of dollars over the past year. Help answer the question that everybody's asking. How much money would we save with this?
Right. If this bill goes through exactly the way it's written, I cannot tell you still to this moment how much you would save, but we can nickel and dime what we know. The lawyer fees, maybe cut it in half. So we're talking maybe that's a quarter per bill. If you're looking at the advertising, it's important. If you're looking at the advertising and most of the advertising somehow went away, that's less than a few dollars per bill. But when it comes to the big stuff, like how much would the company be limited to pass on the fuel costs, which was the big driver, that's going to be decided by the PUC later on. So I can't tell you right now, you're going to save X percent from that big chunk that you were paying. I'd like to find out before it passes, though, so that we could give people a number.
But that's why it's important to ask these questions.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd be here without you.
Maybe somebody will say something in committee tomorrow that gives us a better idea of how much.
And I know you'll keep asking those questions. Marshall, thank you. Colorado has been a leader for protecting abortion rights. On the national level, however, there are still a lot of unknowns. The Supreme Court is briefly extending a ruling that protects access to mifepristone, one of the pills used in medication abortions. Justices are still considering whether restrictions on the pill should be allowed to go into effect, while a case challenging the pill's FDA approval continues in lower courts. A federal court in Texas is challenging the pill's FDA approval, while a competing ruling in another federal court would keep the medication on the market with major restrictions. Last week, the Supreme Court temporarily kept both decisions from taking effect and were supposed to rule on the restrictions by today. Instead, they've put that decision off until at least Friday. Biden administration and the company that manufactures mifepristone have asked the Supreme Court to temporarily protect access to the pill and expedite a decision about the pill's FDA approval. Every week, you step up to help Coloradans $5 at a time. You've raised more than $10.5 million through our Word of Thanks campaign so far. Kyle is obviously off today, but he still has another way to help this week.
Colorado's foster children are in a tough spot through no fault of their own. Colorado's foster parents are often trying their very best without many resources. That's why this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports the nonprofit Cobbled Streets, which supports those kids and those families so they can thrive. Cobbled Streets was born out of the experience of advocates for children who saw a need to provide encouragement and enrichment for kids in the foster system early, so they can build the confidence and the joy that can propel them to success as they get ready to leave the foster care system. Cobbled Streets provides experiences for free to foster families: summer camps, horseback riding, golf lessons, art, sports. Cobbled Streets is determined to prove to Colorado's foster children that they belong, that they're valued, that they can build new skills and they can succeed. You know what that is? That's just childhood. Cobbled Streets wants to make sure that foster children have a joyful and meaningful childhood. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get that link to donate. As always, I'll match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us rolling. Cobbled Streets says that Colorado's foster children are invisible. Well, not to them, certainly, and not to us. We see them too. And Cobbled Streets knows what they need to thrive and dream and succeed.
Denver's been hosting a 420 festival for years. Now officials are saying, hey, maybe we should leave the kids out of this. And an Aurora author hosts her first book signing in front of her 4th grade class.
It just shows what a kid can do.
A 10-year-old proves you're never too young to start following your dreams. That's next. The streets around Denver's Civic Center Park are usually lined with school buses, taking kids on field trips to the state capitol. Tomorrow, the city is asking kids to look the other way. The 420 festival is blazing its way into town. For the first time ever, you have to be 21 to attend. Denver's also rolling out a long list of rules about advertising aimed at reducing the exposure of the festival to kids. You might walk by and see a giant cloud of smoke. You'll smell it for sure, but you won't see any signs promoting marijuana brands. All advertising that's visible from the street or sidewalk is banned. The festival has come a long way since it started with just a bunch of people coming together, smoked weed in the park. And Denver is especially focused now on limiting how much kids see.
Marijuana has been one of the more challenging things to regulate in the history of the city and county of Denver, because we had no one to turn to around the country when we first started to say, hey, here's the blueprint. So Denver had to kind of create the blueprint when it comes to regulated cannabis. And the 420.
So the age to attend is getting higher. The list of rules and regulations are getting higher. And about this time tomorrow, everyone in Civic Center Park will be getting, yeah, you get the idea. When schools around the state shut down for COVID, students were sent home from campus. They couldn't use the cafeteria or the gym or even their dorms. Now CU is going to have to pay up for that decision. CU reached a settlement to pay out $5 million to students who say they were overcharged when campuses shut down. Students filed a class action lawsuit during the 2020 spring semester after schools transitioned to online classes. Those students say they were not refunded any tuition, which means they were paying for services they never received. The $5 million settlement approved last month applies to students at all 4 CU campuses. That includes Boulder, Colorado Springs, Denver, and the Anschutz Medical Campus. Payments are expected to start this summer, and students will have 180 days to redeem their funds. It won't be full tuition refund, but attorneys who filed the suit say it's a way to give, quote, a little bit of money back to students.
Another windy afternoon across eastern Colorado. We've been tracking 30, 40, 50 mile per hour wind speeds charging across the eastern plains. Hence the reason we still aren't out of the woods yet, with high fire danger positioned across far southeastern Colorado till about 9 o'clock tonight. This afternoon, much cooler than the past couple of days. Upper 50s, low 60s here for the urban corridor, followed by mostly cloudy skies and a good chance for rain and snow. As we zoom in, we've been monitoring that rainfall pushing in across the I-25 corridor. Some snowfall developing in eastern Weld County, and potentially some of that making its way here to downtown Denver and the southern suburbs by about 10 o'clock tonight. It won't last long. I'm not anticipating too much accumulation, and by tomorrow morning it is long gone. Clouds return, a couple of isolated showers not out of the question. However, this system finally will be pushing out as we look ahead toward tomorrow evening. 50 degrees with partly cloudy skies. Again, 20s up into the mountains. Still going to be pretty cool out there. We'll be tracking a good chance for some evening snow showers again Friday, rain on Saturday with clearing skies and sunshine, and low 60s on Sunday.
Meet Isla, a little girl with some big dreams.
My goal is as an author to have a few books written and possibly be a bestseller.
She debuts her first book to some very supportive classmates. Next. Some of us grow up wanting to be an astronaut or a pro athlete, and there are even a couple of us who want to be news anchors. Today we met a 10-year-old girl who isn't waiting to grow up to start realizing her dream of becoming a best-selling author.
Hey guys, come on in. Come on in. Let's come all the way over. This is pretty exciting stuff, okay? We have our own Ayla Anderson here. She is Buffalo Trail's first published author, and she is doing the first book talk by a student at this school.
The name of the book is Rocket Rider, and I wrote it. Ayla Anderson. I'm 10 years old. It's about a robot named Ronald who is kicked from his home planet, so he needs to find a new home on Earth.
And so she's really a mix of both of us.
It's like half and half, yeah, for sure. The sci-fi side is more my forte, and then the writing and the creativity is definitely more from Mom.
So I'm just going to read a few passages from my book. So if that sounds good to you guys, then we'll start.
You just don't hear about 10-year-olds writing a book that's this long and this involved and has the character development that she's been able to do.
Lindsay dragged her arm back in. Oops, she said, smiling a little.
Ayla demonstrated early on that she was a very talented writer for her age, and so we started kind of chatting about what she wanted to do, and she said she got an idea for a book. I said, okay, let's write a book then.
I always knew I wanted to do sci-fi, and I didn't know of a lot of books that had a robot as the main character, so I came up with the idea of Ronald and then went from there.
It really shows in the writing that she had a good time and she really enjoyed kind of putting everything together.
I really enjoy the characters and their personalities.
The other kids see her, and a lot of the kids are starting to get that vibe that they want to do something with their writing now, and to really kind of take note that, hey, this means something.
What's your favorite TV show? What's my favorite TV show? I don't watch a lot of TV, actually.
She reads and writes.
I read and write. That's what I do.
So proud.
Very proud.
Age is just a number. I mean, you can do anything that you put your mind to, and she has really been motivated to succeed. And I think the kids see that.
I'm really proud of you. Thank you.
That girl is going to be a star. The way she's answering questions from all of her classmates, you can already tell she's going to be successful. So Ayla tells us that she already has plans to start writing a second book. Reminder, she's just a 5th grader. So as for her first book, it's now available to order on Amazon if you want to go check it out. A serenade on the slopes is the most Colorado thing we saw today. A viewer named Aaron shared this video from closing weekend at Snowmass. It's a snowboarder decked out in a kilt, and either torturing or entertaining the crowd waiting for the lift. And if we didn't stop those, that's one way to celebrate the end of the season. If you see anything, and hopefully we can get that video shown for you in just a second. If you see something that is, there it is. You're waiting for those bagpipes. You can see that's closing weekend at Snowmass as that gentleman is deciding to take St. Patrick's Day a little bit into the ski season there. You can even see him going up into the mountain on the chairlift with little bagpipes. Why not provide a little bit of humor? Hey, if you see something that looks like the most Colorado thing that you've seen today, feel free to email us at 9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext.
This week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports a nonprofit that's working to make sure that foster families that are often stretched thin have all kinds of wonderful free experiences to offer the children in their lives. Cobbled Streets offers foster children the chance to go to Broncos games, learn how to golf, go horseback riding, go to summer camp, do gymnastics or art or music, the kind of stuff that makes a childhood memorable, the kind of stuff no child should go without. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get that link to join me and a bunch of others in donating. Cobbled Streets makes sure that no foster child, no foster family in our state feels forgotten. And Cobbled Streets provides the experiences that let kids dream and build relationships and plan for the future they might have wondered if they could have.